The massive oak doors of the military courtroom groaned as they swung open, the sound slicing through the tense stillness. "All rise!" The bailiff's voice thundered a command that snapped every spine in the room to rigid attention. From the back of the chamber, Brigadier General Jessica Carter appeared not as the quiet shadow her family once dismissed, but as a figure carved from discipline and resolve. Light from the tall, arched windows poured across the room, catching the polished silver star on each shoulder, the sharp lines of her uniform, the quiet authority in her gaze. Her heartbeat didn't race, it slowed, as if her entire body was settling into the gravity of the moment. This was not a walk, it was a march, each step deliberate, each strike of her boots on the hardwood floor echoing like a war drum. The sound rolled forward, filling every corner of the courtroom, growing heavier with each pace. In that brief walk, Jessica carried with her the wake of years, every slight, every overlooked accomplishment, every moment she had swallowed her pride to keep moving forward. And now the air around her seemed to shift, as though the walls themselves recognized the arrival of command. From her seat at the defense table, Amanda, still wearing that air of unshakable confidence, glanced up at the sound of the bailiff's announcement. At first, her smile stayed in place, polished and rehearsed, the kind she wore to boardroom meetings and press interviews. But then, her eyes locked onto the figure walking through the doors. Her gaze dropped to the single silver star gleaming on Jessica's shoulder, and the shift was instant. Confidence cracked into confusion. Confusion shattered into disbelief, and disbelief bled into something far colder, fear. The color drained from her face as though someone had pulled the ground out from beneath her. Across the room, their father reacted instinctively. The old habits from his 2 years in uniform, decades ago, took over before his mind could catch up. He pushed himself upright, spine stiff, not out of joy for his daughter, but out of reflexive respect for the rank she wore. For the first time in her life, Amanda wasn't the center of authority in the room. And for the first time in his life, her father was standing for Jessica. What happens when the person who once mocked you as a failure now has to stand before you and hear their fate? It's not just a question. It's a test of everything you are. A test of whether you'll let old wounds dictate your judgment, or whether you'll rise above the bitterness and hold steady to the oath you swore. For Brigadier General Jessica Carter, this moment wasn't about revenge. It was about closure, the kind that doesn't come with shouting matches or dramatic confrontations. It was the quiet, undeniable truth standing in full uniform in front of a sister who had built her pride on Jessica's supposed failures. The air in that courtroom carried more than just the weight of military law. It carried years of unspoken words, of family dinners where her voice didn't matter, of achievements brushed aside as cute or temporary. Every slight, every laugh at her expense, every time her worth was measured against someone else's standard, it was all here, condensed into the single heartbeat before the trial began. And now the balance had shifted. For the first time, Amanda was no longer in control of the narrative. And for the first time, Jessica had the power to decide how this chapter would end. Amanda's 18th birthday was the kind of celebration that felt like it belonged in a glossy magazine spread. The driveway gleamed under the summer sun, and in it sat a brand new sedan wrapped with a red satin bow so large it nearly swallowed the windshield. Their father stood proudly at her side, keys in hand, beaming, as though the car were not just a gift, but a proclamation. This is our chosen one. Inside, their mother fussed over the camera, capturing every angle of Amanda's beaming face. There was champagne in tall glasses, a homemade banner strung across the living room, and a steady stream of phone calls from relatives offering their congratulations for Amanda's acceptance into an Ivy League business school. The air itself seemed to hum with pride reserved only for one daughter. Jessica stood off to the side, the same age, the same summer sun warming her skin, holding something far smaller in her hands, a crisp letter from the United States Army confirming her hard-won acceptance into Officer Candidate School, OCS, one of the most competitive commissioning programs in the military. She'd beaten the odds, but in this house, it barely registered. Later that evening, her mother handed her a white envelope. For a brief moment, Jessica allowed herself to hope maybe they had planned something for her too. Inside was a $50 bookstore gift voucher. No speeches, no bow, no driveway surprise. Just a polite smile from her father and a half-hearted, "That's nice, honey, just be careful out there." In that instant, the divide between the golden child and the other child became permanent. One was handed a gleaming set of keys to a future everyone could see. The other was quietly given a voucher, as if her dream were a passing hobby. It wasn't just the car. It wasn't just the voucher. Moments like that had been happening for as long as Jessica could remember. Small cuts that left scars no one could see. She remembered the year she won first place at the regional science fair. She'd spent weeks building her project, wiring circuits by hand, testing data late into the night. Her teacher had even told her she was the youngest student in years to take home the top award. She walked through the front door that evening, ribbon and certificate in hand, her chest swelling with pride. But in the kitchen, no one looked up from their plates. Her father was reading the paper, her mother discussing Amanda's upcoming debate competition. By dessert, the subject had shifted entirely. Amanda's schedule, Amanda's future, Amanda's next big thing. The ribbon stayed in Jessica's bag, the moment swallowed whole by silence. Years later, she earned an academic scholarship, her ticket to a respected university, a chance to study alongside some of the brightest minds in the country. She'd worked for it, bled for it, while juggling part-time jobs and military prep. When she told her parents, her mother smiled in that faint, distracted way and said, "That's a nice little hobby, Jess, but you can't make a real life out of that." A hobby? That's what they called the thing she had poured her heart into. And so Jessica learned to keep her victories to herself, folding them away like secret letters no one wanted to read. Over time, Jessica became fluent in the art of silence. Not the comfortable kind, the suffocating kind, the kind that presses against your ribs until you learn to breathe shallow so it doesn't hurt as much. She stopped bringing home certificates. She stopped mentioning promotions. The trophies from track meets, the commendation letters from her commanding officers, the quiet praise from mentors, none of it ever made it to the family living room. Instead, she stored them in a small wooden box under her bed, a private archive of victories no one in her bloodline seemed to value. By day, with her family, she lived in the world they assigned her, the quieter, less important sister, the one who tried the army once, and in their eyes, never got much further. She played her part well, smiling politely through dinners, nodding at Amanda's latest triumphs, keeping her own stories neatly locked away. But in the other world, the one she had built for herself in uniform, she was something entirely different. Here, her voice carried weight. Here, her decisions shaped missions, and her presence commanded respect. The military didn't care about family labels or childhood hierarchies. It cared about results. Two worlds, one where she was invisible. One where she was indispensable, and deep down, she knew only one of them would define her future. The restaurant smelled of aged wine and fresh truffle, the kind of place where the waiters moved like shadows and the silverware gleamed under the soft golden light. Crystal glasses caught the glow of chandeliers, casting tiny fragments of light across polished mahogany tables. Laughter rolled through the air, rich, confident laughter from people who never had to check the prices on the menu. At the center of it all sat Amanda, radiant in a deep emerald dress that seemed made to match the envy she often inspired. This was her night, a carefully orchestrated celebration of her promotion to senior vice president at one of the most powerful defense contracting firms in the country. The table overflowed with expensive champagne, plates of delicate appetizers, and the low murmur of important people exchanging important words. Jessica was there too, but only in body. She sat at the far end of the table in a seat chosen more for convenience than for honor, her face illuminated only by the spillover glow of the chandelier. The warmth in the room didn't reach her. It was Amanda's light everyone basked in, and Jessica's presence was little more than an afterthought, a faint shadow cast on the edge of her sister's spotlight. A second glass of champagne loosened Amanda's voice and sharpened her smile. She rose a little in her chair, tapping the rim of her flute with a polished nail. "Quick funny story," she said, eyes bright, "about my little sister." A ripple of polite laughter. Forks paused midair. "She tried the army once," Amanda went on, savoring the setup. "Didn't even make it through basic. These days she files paperwork at some office." Another laugh, louder this time, the kind that sounds like approval disguised as entertainment. Jessica didn't flinch. She set her water glass down with care, aligning it with the bread plate, as if the table had ranks and lanes. Her face stayed neutral, shoulders square, chin level. Her training whispered, observe, orient, decide, act, and sometimes wait. At the head of the table, the Senior Department of Defense executive, tailored suit, measured posture, cut his eyes toward Jessica. Not a full turn, just a precise glance. Quick assessment. The kind people in his world make before they say anything that matters. His expression didn't change, but the air around him did, like a room taking a breath. "Jess has always been sensitive," Amanda added tone, warm and patronizing at once. "She means well." She flashed a smile that played to the room. "We all find our level, right?" The joke landed like a blade wrapped in velvet. Someone chuckled. Someone else avoided eye contact. Crystal chimed as a server refreshed champagne, and the sound felt too bright, too clean for the mess Amanda had just made. Jessica recognized the DoD executive now. She had read his briefings, knew his priorities, knew the time and location of their meeting tomorrow. 0800 Pentagon. A secure room where the only currency was facts. There, titles and rumors would evaporate under the fluorescent lights of clearance-only truth. She could have corrected the record in a single sentence. She could have dismantled the joke with one quiet fact. She didn't. Instead, she offered a measured nod toward Amanda's corner of the table. "Congratulations on your promotion," Jessica said evenly. No sarcasm, no heat, just a line drawn in the sand that no one else could see. The executive watched the exchange without blinking, then looked down at his napkin, smoothing the edge with a thumb. When he looked up again, his gaze settled on Jessica a beat longer than politeness required. Not pity, not confusion, something closer to curiosity and recognition. Amanda lifted her glass for another toast, riding the room's approval like a wave. Jessica lifted her water. Clear, steady, unbothered. She didn't need the table to believe her. Tomorrow, the truth would wear a uniform. Jessica knew the man before anyone said his name. Not from parties like this, but from the header on a secure memo. Deputy Assistant Secretary, Cyber and Intelligence Oversight. Tomorrow, 8:00 hours. Pentagon. SCII. The irony didn't sting. It settled cool, precise, as if her training had laid a hand on her shoulder. While Amanda rode the room's applause, Jessica pictured a different room entirely. No chandeliers, no laughter, just fluorescent light and the low hum of classified servers. A rectangular table, 6 chairs, a clock that never ran late. She could see the slide deck in her mind, each frame a brick in a wall she'd spent months building. Threat landscape summary. Recent intrusions mapped to known TTPs. Lateral movement indicators inside a Title X contractor. Proposed containment and prosecution pathways. No color, no flourish, only facts that cut clean. The DoD executive lifted his glass but didn't drink. He glanced once more at Jessica, longer this time, as if placing her voice before he'd ever heard her speak. She returned a small professional nod, the kind you give a colleague you'll brief soon, not a stranger from a party. The message traveled without sound. "Tomorrow, sir. Business." Amanda kept narrating the funny story, turning it into a polished anecdote she could pull out at conferences. A few guests leaned in, charmed by the ease with which she performed it. Jessica let the words pass over her like light rain on a waterproof jacket. She didn't correct, didn't defend. Not here, not now. Her phone vibrated once in her clutch, a calendar reminder. 0700 pre-brief, 0800 Pentagon. Jessica Carter, Task Force Sentinel. Under it, a single line in bold, Operation Gilded Cage Executive Update. The title looked strange against the linen and crystal. In the party's warm glow, the phrase felt out of place, like a classified stamp on a birthday card. But in her world, it made perfect sense. A gilded cage, shiny from the outside, rotten at the hinges. And tomorrow, the person at the head of this table would hear how the hinges had been found. The server refilled Amanda's champagne. The executive set his glass down untouched. "Miss Carter," he said politely to Jessica this time, "will you be joining us tomorrow?" There it was, the quiet acknowledgement, without titles, without rank, just the fact of it. "Yes, sir," Jessica replied, even, calm, a single straight line. He nodded once. Then he smiled small, knowing, the kind of smile that says, "I look forward to hearing what you have to say." Across the table, Amanda missed it. She was busy curating laughter, polishing her version of the truth. But the room had shifted by a degree. Only a few people felt. The man whose opinion mattered most had changed who he was watching. Jessica lifted her water, tasted the cool, clean edge of it, and put the glass down exactly where it had been. The party could keep its warmth. She had a colder room to prepare for, and in that room, the story would be told in a different language. Evidence. Tomorrow at 800, the joke would meet the facts, and the facts would not laugh. The Scythe didn't welcome you, it tolerated you. Concrete bones, no windows, air cold enough to keep you awake, 2 badge swipes, a keypad code, a palm skin that never hurried. The door sealed behind Jessica with the soft hydraulic hiss of finality, and the white noise generators purred like a storm trapped in the walls. No phones, no Wi-Fi, no outside light. Here, truth lived on air-gapped metal and left fingerprints in logs. On the far wall, 6 screens formed a seamless pane of moving data. Threat maps pulsed with red latticework nodes and edges beaconing intervals, suspicious credentials, hopping subnets in staccato steps. Process trees bloomed and died. A timeline scrolled like a heart monitor of intent. In one quadrant, a kill chain diagram annotated by hand reconnaissance, weaponization, delivery, exploitation, installation, C2 actions on objectives. In another, a heat map of lateral movement inside a Title 10 contractors network, arrows marking pivots through a misconfigured service account. Colonel Jessica Carter stepped to the head of the table. Task Force Sentinel, 30 people at full strength, rose from their chairs on instinct. She wasn't loud. She didn't need to be. Authority in this room sounded like clarity. Status, she said. An incident responder, the kind who wore coffee like a unit patch, pointed to a spike on screen 2. New outbound at 0217. Encrypted. Not our cert. Suspected exfil staging. A malware analyst traced a process tree with a capped marker. Loader is signed, likely stolen cert. It calls a dropper that abuses a living off the land binary, then injects into a privileged daemon. We can detonate in the sandbox kernel. The financial forensics lead slid a printed flowchart across the table paper because nothing digital leaves the room. Funds moved through 3 shells in 29 hours. All roads lead to a Luxembourg intermediary tied to the same contractor. The JAG liaison sat forward. Jurisdiction holds under the contract. Evidence chain is clean. We can move for the next warrant. Jessica listened, eyes on the wall, mind on the edges where attackers hide and arguments fail. She didn't rush to speak. She calibrated the room first. Who was tired? Who was running hot? Who was about to find the thread that unravels everything? Mark the 0217 channel. Mirror it in the sinkhole. Keep the actor convinced the door's still open, she said at last. Legal draft the warrant for the service account owner and the third-party admin. Finance map the Luxembourg hop to ultimate beneficial ownership. Intel pull language markers from C2 traffic, idioms, compile times, anything that fingerprints the operator. She tapped the tabletop twice, a habit more than a signal. We assume compromise, not incompetence. The difference is survival. Around her, the room moved. Quiet, efficient, a choreography of specialists who trusted each other with the things they couldn't see alone. Someone spun up a detonation VM. Someone else tagged a fresh Yara rule. A linguist began pulling idioms from server banners. Jessica's gaze settled on a cluster of nodes labeled GCIN, Gilded Cage Internal. The graph showed a branch that didn't belong, a delicate swerve away from standard pivot paths, as if the intruder knew exactly which doors wouldn't squeak. That told her two things, access and arrogance. This isn't random, she said softly, mostly to herself. It's curated. She felt the weight of what the screens didn't show, names of soldiers downrange whose locations were safeguarded by the very datasets this actor wanted. If the wrong table saw the right numbers, people wouldn't just lose careers, they would lose lives. She straightened. We brief at 0800, same audience. I'll take the first 10 minutes and frame risk to force protection. Keep jargon minimal, evidence maximal. She paused. We do this by the book. We don't miss. Understood. Roger, the room answered as one. Colonel Carter glanced at the clock. 0700, pre-brief was a stone's throw away, and then at her team, the only family that had ever demanded only what she could prove. Here, the lights were harsh and the air unforgiving. But in this cold, she was seen, and in this silence, she was necessary. The room had been loud in the quiet way sipes are loud, keys clicking, fans whirring, pens tapping. Then one line on the screen changed the air. Hold. Jessica's voice cut cleanly across the table. On screen 3, a set of identifiers slid into alignment device, fingerprint, VPN token, reuse time, pattern, and a procurement portal login that shouldn't have existed outside a restricted subnet. The analyst zoomed in. Metadata resolved into something human, initials, contact pivots, a travel pattern that matched a calendar scraped from a compromised mailbox. A name surfaced from the noise. Amanda, not a code name, not an alias. Not a coincidence, just 6 letters that split the room in half. Chairs didn't scrape, no one gasped. Task Force Sentinel didn't do drama. But a stillness moved through the team, the kind that comes when the picture finally snaps into focus and everyone sees the same thing at once. Corroborate, Jessica said. Her voice didn't rise. 3 independent sources. The malware analyst pointed to a reused signing cert that touched a workstation registered to a senior executive. The financial lead highlighted wire transfers moving through a chain of shells linked to a boutique consultancy whose operating address matched Amanda's travel logs within hours. Intel flagged a string of idioms in the command and control traffic, English polished with the specific clipped cadence of someone who wrote emails for a living. Add HR cross-reference, Jessica said. Do not exfiltrate. Paper only. The printer hummed heavy paper, black ink, because nothing digital leaves the room. Each sheet landed like a measured heartbeat. Credential reuse map, timeline overlay, beneficial ownership tree. At the center of the spider web, the node labeled Amanda pulsed in red. For a breath, Jessica allowed the human part of the moment to exist. It was small, it was private, it was gone in a second. This was not about a childhood or a car wrapped in red ribbon or a joke told over champagne. It was about targeting matrices for patrol routes. It was about force protection and the quiet, invisible ways soldiers come home or don't. Legal, she said, eyes still on the wall. Validate jurisdiction under Title 10 language in the contract addendum. Finance, extend the Luxembourg branch UBO or bust. Intel, scrub any bias from your write-up. The name is incidental. The behavior is the point. Across from her, the JAG liaison met her gaze. There was no pity there, no surprise. Just the steady look of another professional inside the blast radius of a fact. Jurisdiction holds, he said. Chain of custody intact. Recommend next steps post-disclosure. Post-disclosure. The words threaded a needle Jessica had already seen. A conflict existed. It would be named, out loud, on paper, in order. She exhaled slow and exact. We treat this as a national security matter, not a family matter, she said. We proceed by the book, or we don't proceed. Heads nodded. Screens updated. The room returned to motion. The graph on the wall kept pulsing. Red, certain, impersonal. In a world built to strip away noise, the only thing that remained was the signal. And the signal spelled Amanda. The corridor outside the commanding general's office felt colder than the Scythe. Jessica emptied her pockets into the gray tray. No pen, no watch, no phone, and signed the visitor log, even though she worked 2 doors down. Procedure mattered more than comfort today. She knocked once. Enter. Inside the room was spare a wall map, a flag, a table with 3 chairs. The staff judge advocate was already there, legal pad open. The chief of staff stood by the door, silent, observant. This was not a courtesy chat. This was record. Jessica took the seat opposite the general and spoke first, voice steady and precise. Sir, I'm declaring a personal conflict. The primary subject identified in our trace analysis is my sister, Amanda Carter. I request determination for recusal under policy and am prepared to hand over operational control immediately. The words were simple. Saying them felt like loosening a tourniquet. The general didn't look surprised. He folded his hands, eyes clear. Colonel Carter, can you separate duty from family? Yes, sir. If I cannot, I will step aside without hesitation. The staff judge advocate added calm and clinical. Will memorialize this disclosure in writing. Recommend additional guardrails, second signature on warrants, independent evidence review, and no direct contact with the subject. Jessica nodded. Agreed. The general leaned forward, elbows on the table, choosing each word like a piece placed on a chessboard. You know these people, their habits, their tells. That's not a conflict in itself. It's an advantage if we use it correctly. He paused. You will remain in command of the operational investigation. JAG handles prosecution. Every action is by the book. Every document is traceable. We chase behavior, not names. Understood. Understood, sir. The chief of staff slid a form across the table. Jessica signed the conflict disclosure. The JAG signed as witness. The clock on the wall ticked once, loud as a gavel in the quiet. Colonel, the general said softer now, but no less firm, if this investigation touches anything that compromises your impartiality, I expect you to say so immediately. You will hear it from me first, sir. She stood. The room remained still. No one offered comfort. No one needed to. This was not a family problem. It was a national security case with a dangerous center of gravity. At the door, the general added one last line. Carter, do not let anyone rewrite the record. Not even you. Yes, sir. Jessica stepped back into the corridor and felt the cool air bite her lungs. The path forward was narrower now, but it was clear. Paper first. Evidence only. And a wall between her badge and her blood. The war without gunfire began at midnight and ended at dawn, then started again. No headlines, no heroics. Just the blue glow of monitors, the hiss of white noise, and the dry taste of coffee that had been reheated one too many times. Hours folded in on themselves. Logs marched past like an endless convoy. Authentication events, beacon intervals, anomalous DNS lateral hops, privilege escalations that lasted 7 minutes too long. Every line was a footprint, every timestamp a breath. Jessica read the pattern the way a medic reads a pulse. Steady, then stutter, then something that shouldn't be there. Flag the 0311 spike, she said, without looking away. It pivots off the same misconfigured service account. Mirror and observe. Pens scratched, keys clicked. The room moved like a well-drilled platoon. At 0143, she initialed a chain of custody form. The evidence bag hissed as the seal locked shut. At 0206, she co-signed a warrant, the second signature required by the new guardrails. At 0217, the sinkhole caught a whisper from the attacker, a heartbeat sent to a server that no longer led where they thought it did. At 0358, the printer spat out heavy paper, and the map of money trails began to take shape. The financial flow wasn't a river, it was a fog. Money dissolved through a Delaware LLC into a BVI shell, then condensed again in a consultancy with no employees and an office that rented by the hour. From there, it hopped to a Luxembourg intermediary where compliance was a sales pitch, not a standard. The lines on the chart looked clean. The intent behind them did not. Overlay the wires with travel logs, Jessica said. I want the money and the movement to breathe in the same minute. They did. The pulses lined up wire out flight in calendar entry gateway log, a lunch reservation that matched a cell tower ping 2 blocks from a private bank. Time blurred. Shoulders burned. Eyes went grainy. A junior analyst set a cup of water near Jessica's elbow and didn't interrupt her train of thought. Someone dimmed the screens by 5% so the team could last another hour. The JAG liaison arrived with a template for the next warrant service account owner, third-party admin, and a narrowly tailored search of a personal device that would never leave the owner's custody. By the book, Jessica reminded, signing where the sticky flags told her to sign. The pen felt heavier than any metal she had ever worn. Not because of the ink, because of the finality. Paper meant you could not pretend later that you hadn't meant it. They reconstructed the attacker's week like a storyboard. Monday, reconnaissance masked as a routine audit. Tuesday, weaponization and delivery under the cover of a signed loader. Wednesday, exploitation through a forgotten entitlement that had outlived its owner. Thursday, installation and a quiet C2 channel that hummed like a refrigerator you only notice when it stops. Friday, actions on objectives, theft as a service, clinical and unhurried. Between steps, Jessica checked herself the way pilots run a pre-flight. Duty, guardrails, bias purge. She mentally set aside the word sister until it was just a set of 6 letters attached to a set of behaviors. The team watched her do it in real time, not with pity, not with awe, but with the sober respect of people who know how much effort it takes to put the mission ahead of the story you were born into. At 0422, finance pushed a new chart across the table. The final arrow in the maze resolved into a name that matched a signature authority on a vendor onboarding file, a clean seam between the digital and the physical. Evidence that carried its own weight. Good, Jessica said. Now we test the seam. Independent review. Fresh eyes. Assume we're wrong and try to break it. They tried. They couldn't. The numbers held, the logs held, the signatures held. By 0517, the wall of screens looked less like chaos and more like a skeleton, ribs, spine, joints, all connected in ways a jury would understand. The sinkhole stayed open, the actor kept breathing, and the team kept listening, patient and relentless. Dawn found them still there. The hallway lights warmed a shade. Someone cracked the door for fresh air and closed it again before the scythe could swallow the outside world. Jessica flexed the cramp out of her hand and capped the pen. This was what justice looked like up close. Sleepless, paper-heavy, precise. No fire, no smoke. Only evidence. And evidence does not blink. The alert didn't come with trumpets. It arrived as a discreet knock. Her aide stepped in, posture crisp, a folder tucked under one arm like a classified secret that couldn't wait for sunrise. "Ma'am," he said, voice steady, "promotion list posted." Jessica wiped a thumb across the corner of a printout, clearing a fleck of toner, and opened the folder. The page on top was stark and unadorned. No confetti, no speeches. Just a line that changed the geometry of everything. Carter Jessica A., selected for promotion to Brigadier General. Effective date next month. Orders to follow. The room seemed to recalibrate around her. The screens still hummed, the team still worked, the investigation still breathed on the wall, but the center of gravity had shifted by the weight of a single star. "Congratulations, General," the JAG liaison said quietly from the doorway, catching himself a second later. "Designate." His smile was small, professional, respectful. "This will place you in the chain as a general court-martial convening authority." The words weren't a trophy, they were a responsibility. GCMCA meant signatures that shaped destinies. It meant she would carry the legal power to approve charges, to refer a case to trial, to select panel members, to set the process in motion, and certify that every step met the standard. It meant the investigation that had been her mission would now sit beneath an authority that bore her name. "Guardrails stand," Jessica said, the first thought already a boundary. JAG handles prosecution. Independent evidence review continues. I don't touch anything that would make me a witness. "Understood," the liaison replied. "We'll widen the wall between roles." She set the paper down and felt the edge of it bite the pads of her fingers, real exact, impossible to soften. A promotion is celebration in most houses. In this house, the one with steel doors and no windows, it was an extra layer of armor you had to learn to carry. Around the table, no one clapped, no one needed to. Instead, the team adjusted almost imperceptibly clearer titles on the whiteboard, dual approvals routed through a second Colonel JAG, drafting updated memos to reflect the new authority. The choreography shifted so that the person who wore the star would never be the reason the case was questioned. Her aide hovered. "There's also a note from the 3-star, ma'am. He'll want you at the color ceremony next week." She pictured the pinning the silver star, the salute, the photos that would live in frames she would never hang in her parents' living room. She pictured the courtroom, too, the heavy doors, the scraped chairs, the sound of "all rise." The two images overlapped for a second, and then slid apart like transparency sheets, aligned and then separated. "This isn't a victory," she said, mostly to herself. "It's a narrower line to walk." She signed where the flags told her to sign acknowledgement of orders received, acknowledgement of new responsibilities under the UCMJ and RCM, acknowledgement that the same pen that approved warrants could now send a case to trial. The pen felt heavier than it had at 0206, not because of fatigue, because of meaning. The aide gathered the papers. "I'll prep the protocol change, General Designate." Jessica nodded. "Make sure the team knows the star doesn't change the standard. We keep everything clean, visible, defensible." "Yes, ma'am." When the door closed, the Scythe returned to its usual weather, cold, methodical, alive with the sound of proof. Jessica lifted her eyes to the pulsing graph labeled GCINT and felt the two worlds she'd been living in for years lock into place with an audible click. The investigator who followed the data, the convening authority who would certify the path it took to court. 1 star, 1 oath, and 0 room for error. Amanda and her attorney traded the case like a familiar boardroom problem, complex, expensive, but ultimately manageable. A contract dispute, a compliance misunderstanding, a settlement waiting to be negotiated. In a glass-walled conference room high above the city, they built a plan that fit their world. Laptops open, lattes sweating, a view that made every problem look small. "We'll frame this as a procurement issue," the attorney said, sliding a deck across the table. Discovery will be noisy, but survivable. Worst case scenario, a civil penalty, maybe an industry bar, we can appeal. We'll lean on arbitration clauses and knock out jurisdictional overreach. Amanda nodded, absorbing the vocabulary. She understood narrative framing, exposure, off-ramp. Public statement, she asked. I've drafted it, he said, calm as a metronome. You're shocked. You're cooperating. You welcome a thorough review. He tapped a page labeled Key Messages. We mention your philanthropic work. We remind press of your industry awards. We humanize the brand. They discussed bench strength at the firm, crisis communications, friendly journalists who'd take background calls, a white paper about the evolving threat landscape that would make her sound both visionary and victim. They never said court-martial. They said civil litigation. They said arbitration. They said, we've done this 100 times. The attorney circled a date. We'll push to delay until Q4. Buy time. Let the story fatigue the news cycle. He smiled like a man who had watched storms from safe rooms. These things rarely go the distance. He assumed the government's case would be a stack of spreadsheets and a stern letter from a U.S. attorney who could be negotiated with over coffee. He assumed the decision-maker was a distant, impersonal office, someone with no reason to care, no face attached to the file. He imagined a gray suit, not a green uniform. He imagined anyone but Jessica. On the other side of town, in a windowless room that didn't believe in spin, orders took shape in black ink. The convening authority would not be a faceless bureaucrat. It would be Brigadier General Jessica Carter. Not a rumor, not a placeholder. A lawful power with a single star and a single mandate. Do it by the book. Amanda rehearsed lines in front of a mirror. We value transparency. We're cooperating fully. This is a misunderstanding. The phrases slid easily off a tongue trained for investor calls. They sounded good in rooms with soft carpet and better lighting. But courtrooms with flags in the corners and a seal on the wall don't care how a line sounds. They care whether it stands. And in that courtroom, the panel wouldn't be consultants or investors. They would be officers. They would read logs, not press releases. Amanda smiled at her attorney, reassured by the familiar choreography, emails, memos, talking points, strategy decks. She didn't know the stage had changed. She didn't know the audience had changed. She didn't know who would be holding the gavel's shadow. Not yet. The courtroom rose as one. Chairs scraped, fabric rustled. The sound folded into silence as Jessica crossed the threshold. Amanda turned, still wearing the kind of smile a winner keeps in her pocket, polished, photogenic, perfectly timed. It said, I've been in rooms like this. I know how to win them. Then her eyes tracked up the aisle. First, confidence, chin high, shoulders open, the social reflex of someone used to being the brightest person at the table. Next, curiosity, a slight tilt of the head as the light slid over a green uniform instead of a gray suit. The smile held, but looser now, as if waiting for a name tag to confirm what the brain was already guessing wrong. Then, doubt, the moment her gaze found the single silver star on Jessica's shoulder. Not a pin, a rank, the kind that rearranges the atmosphere of a room. The smile retreated a millimeter. Her fingers tightened around a pen she didn't remember picking up. Confusion arrived, like fog, soft but total. Why was Jessica in uniform? Why was everyone standing straighter? Why did the judge's eyes shift from the docket to the aisle and stay there? Recognition struck next. Sharp and clean nameplate, ribbons, the exact cadence of command in Jessica's stride. The story Amanda had told about her sister failed. Basic pushes, paper, met a version of Jessica that didn't fit in the story at all. And finally, shock, the cold, bloodless kind. Color drained from her cheeks as the truth clicked into place. Brigadier General, Deputy Commander, convening authority. The pen in her hand stopped moving. Her breath forgot what to do for a beat and came back in a shallow, audible sip. Her attorney whispered, "It's okay, stay with me." But the words had to swim to reach her. Amanda's eyes darted to the star again, then to the judge, then back to Jessica. Each pass stripped another layer off the old narrative. The room hadn't changed, but the hierarchy had, and everyone felt it. She was no longer the gravitational center. Across the aisle, Jessica didn't slow. No flourish, no glare. Just the precision of a leader, exactly where she belonged. She gave a crisp nod to the bench and took her seat. Amanda's smile was gone now, replaced by a careful stillness, like porcelain cooling too fast. She swallowed once, set the pen down, folded her hands to keep them from shaking. In the space of 10 steps, certainty had become a question, and the answer was walking toward the front of the room wearing a star. Silence did the work. Jessica didn't need to clear her throat, adjust a sleeve, or glance at the defense table. She sat with her cover off, hands folded, posture straight. A single silver star rested on each shoulder. That was the statement. That was the sentence. The judge acknowledged her with a measured nod. Protocol, not pageantry. The bailiff's stance sharpened a degree. The court reporter's fingers hovered, waiting, as if the room itself were listening. On the panel, senior officers settled their jackets and squared their shoulders. They didn't salute. They didn't need to. Their quiet attention said enough. Command is in the room. The prosecutor rose, voice, even cadence, disciplined. Your Honor, the government is ready to proceed. No theatrics, no raised volume. He didn't have to sell anything today. At the defense table, Amanda's attorney shifted strategies without admitting it. He slowed his breath, chose smaller words. His pen stopped tapping. He knew the difference between an argument and a standard. In a civilian court, you convince. In this court, you comply. Amanda tried to meet Jessica's eyes. Jessica did not look back. Not avoidance, deliberate neutrality. Her gaze stayed forward, bench, flags, seal. Duty, not drama. The room calibrated to her stillness. Chairs stopped creaking. Papers stopped rustling. Even the air conditioner seemed to lower its voice. The uniform spoke in a language the entire room understood. By the book. Chain of custody, chain of command. No flourish, no threat. Just the weight of an oath worn openly. When the prosecutor mentioned Operation Gilded Cage, a few heads in the gallery turned. Jessica didn't move. Presence was enough. Presence told the panel this case had gravity. Presence told the defense there would be no shortcuts. Presence told Amanda that the story had changed authors. Her father eased back into his seat, eyes pinned to the star, not the face. Respect forced him to sit straighter than pride ever did. He swallowed, said nothing. Silence again, doing what words could not. Jessica breathed in through her nose, out through her mouth. Steady, quiet, exact. The lesson of a career lived behind classified doors. Power isn't volume. Power is alignment, values, facts, authority clicking into place. And in that alignment, she didn't need a speech. The uniform had already delivered it. The panel filed back in. The foreperson stood. Guilty, he said, on all counts. Paper moved. A clock ticked once. The room held its breath. The clerk crossed the well and set a thin stack in front of Jessica. The pages were heavy with signatures and seals. The pen was government issue, unremarkable. It still felt like a weight in her hand. She read what had to be read. She checked what had to be checked. Then she signed. One stroke for the findings, one for the action, one for the record that would outlive this day. Ink settled into the fibers. Final, ordinary, irreversible. Each line closed a chapter 15 years long. Science fairs forgotten, scholarships dismissed, a dinner table that never had room for her voice. Every letter of her name said what words could not. The ledger is balanced. Jessica capped the pen, stood, smoothed her uniform with a single practiced motion. She did not look left, she did not look right. Not at Amanda, not at her parents. No victory, no gloating, no goodbye. She stepped away from the table, from the case, from the version of herself they had written. No backward glance, only forward. The stage lights were warm, but the room was disciplined rows of uniforms, faces steady, a sea of colonels and brand new generals breathing the same quiet air. The banner read, U.S. Army War College Commencement. The murmur faded as Brigadier General Jessica Carter stepped to the podium. She didn't start with a joke. She didn't start with a victory lap. She started with a truth. Command isn't a trophy you hang on the wall, she said, voice calm, carrying without strain. It's weight. You feel it most when the room is empty, when the decision is yours and there's no one left to applaud. A pause. Not for drama, so the lesson could land. In cyber warfare, noise is constant. Headlines, dashboards, alarms. Don't mistake volume for value. Our job is to find the one signal that keeps people alive. Integrity is how you find it. Integrity is the filter that turns chaos into choice. She looked out over the audience, combat patches, campaign ribbons, tired eyes that had seen too much and kept going anyway. You will be praised for the wins people can see, she continued, but your real work will be the quiet prevention no one notices, the attack that never happened, the convoy that arrived, the family that didn't get a call at midnight. That's your legacy, measurable only by absence. A cadet in the back sat taller. Someone in the front crossed their arms and then relaxed them again. Here's what carried my teams when the lights were harsh and the hours were long, Jessica said, counting on her fingers, simple and precise. 1. Write it down. If it isn't on paper, it didn't happen. 2. Share credit, carry blame. Your soldiers will follow that math. 3. Hold the line when no one's watching. Standards are what you do in the dark. She did not mention a courtroom. She did not mention a sister. She didn't need to. The lesson didn't require a biography. You'll be tempted to narrate your worth, she said. Don't. Do the work. The record will speak. And when it speaks, let it speak for your people first. The hall was silent in the best way, attention, not awe. Lead gently, she closed. Be exact. Choose the signal. And remember, the most powerful thing you will ever carry isn't rank. It's trust. Applause rose like a steady tide. No whoops, no whistles, just the sound of professionals agreeing with what they already believed, now said out loud. For Jessica, it wasn't triumph, it was alignment, a promise made years ago, kept again and offered forward. Her personal phone buzzed against the podium's base, one short vibration that felt louder than the applause had. After the ceremony, Jessica stepped into a quiet side corridor, the kind with beige paint and framed photos of classes long graduated. She unlocked the screen. A message from a number she knew by muscle memory more than affection. We're proud of you. We didn't know. The ellipsis did most of the talking. Years of dinners, years of silence, years of choosing the brighter child because it was easier. All of it compressed into 3 dots and a late confession. Jessica let the words settle. No anger, no thrill. Just a clean understanding this was a currency she no longer spent. She typed nothing, not out of spite, but out of clarity. There was nothing to negotiate, nothing to perform. The record had spoken. The work had spoken. And the people who needed her, her team, her soldiers, already knew. She locked the phone and set it face down on a bench. A small smile, grateful, not gloating, touched her mouth. Then she turned back toward the exit where her aides waited with a tablet and an operational update. The world did not pause for overdue pride. Validation had once felt like oxygen. Now it felt like perfume, pleasant, unnecessary, and something she didn't need to wear to breathe. Real success isn't the applause you finally get at home. It's the promise you keep to yourself when no one is watching. It's earning your own respect day after day until the mirror nods back. If your path has been lonely, if the room never clapped when you walked in, keep walking. The work will speak. The record will stand. And one day you'll realize you don't need permission to be proud. Your turn. If you've ever had to build your own road stone by stone, no shortcuts, share it below. This space is for you. We honor your grit, your integrity, and the quiet victories no one saw but you. Real power isn't loud, it's consistent. Jessica's journey shows that the most reliable path to meaningful success is to anchor your life to standards you control: integrity, discipline, and proof. Family recognition is nice, but self-respect is non-negotiable. A simple 5-step playbook you can use today. Define your standard. Write one sentence you'll live by, e.g., I do the work right even when no one is watching. Document the truth. Keep a record of proof journal. Wins, lessons, tough calls. Facts calm self-doubt. Guard your boundaries. Separate what you owe your family from what you owe your future. Kind, clear, firm. Share credit, carry blame. Give others the spotlight, keep the standard for yourself. Trust compounds. Choose the signal, ignore the noise. Focus on the one action that moves your life forward today. Let opinions scroll by. When you live this way, you stop chasing permission to be proud. The record, your record, will speak for you. If this story resonated, join us on Through Her Eyes for weekly, emotionally rich narratives and practical takeaways. Hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new chapter. Your story matters here. Stay subscribed and grow with us.